Welcome everyone. Today I have a new exciting build for Diablo Season 3 and also for the Charge Barbarians. As you can see behind me, I actually made two variety of the build for the Barbarians, including the Working Arsenal and also the Berserking Charge build for the Barbarians. We'll briefly go through the summary notes to see what is changed with Charge, and I'll go through within the game to show you guys the Charge and also how the cooldowns and also damage will be reflected after the latest patch, and also how does my build work. Because we have some very interesting mechanics and we have ways of doing additional damage with Charge, ways of doing additional explosion damage with Charge, and also ways of grouping enemies together with Whirlwind. What that means is you'll be dealing damage to multiple targets, which will in return deal AOE damage to the rest of the enemies. So this can multiply your damage by 5 or 10 times depending on the pack of enemies. So quite excited to share this build with you guys, and I have crafted a Paragon board all the way up to 100. And I have crafted 2 different Paragon boards depending on how you want to play your Barbarians in the Season 3. So coming over to our guide over here. So if you guys are not aware, I'm sure most of you are aware because this is the highlight for the Barbarians. The Barbarians are said to have a 900% increase of base damage for Charge. Now if I'm reading this correctly, currently my Charge is doing about 36,000 to 44,000 damage. And if I'm getting 9 times more damage, I'm looking at about 1/3 of a million, so about 300,000 damage with my Charge. So 300,000 damage with my Charge. Well, how much does my Hammer of Engine do? It's similar to my Hammer of Engine. So pretty much the Charge itself will become the Hammer of Engine. And Charge has some very interesting mechanics that we can kind of like utilize and also benefit from, which let's go through this one. So here we can see there's also additional buff to Charges about the impact terrain damage, and also the Charges no longer, having the reduced terrain cooldown, but rather this will reduce against boss cooldown. So the ways of Charge works is that Charge does not consume any energy, but rather Charge will be using a cooldown. And notice that currently on level 4 my Charge has a cooldown of 13 seconds together with 10% cooldown reduction. So if I were to increase this to level 9, notice that my Charge is down to 11 seconds. So the higher you go with your Charge, the damage will increase and also cooldown will reduce. So this skill by itself is very good to get to higher levels. And if we come back over here, what you're gonna see is if we come over to the gear selection, I have stated that if we can get 4 ranks of Charge on the pens and also 3 rank of brawling skills on the amulet, we're looking at +7. And if you get the shackle in the future, you're looking at +11 on the Charge. Together with your skills, you can get to +12 or +16 of Charge skills rank on your gears, which can be very good for the late game. Now that you guys know about the exciting part about Charge, let's have a look at the combination of the aspects and also legendaries. Now for both of the build, I'm using similar combinations, and I have not been using any of the unique items. I'll be updating unique items, but I feel at the early stage of the game, we won't be able to get lots of uniques. So this is also a leveling build with Charge, and also a mid-game to end-game build, because you can be acquiring those legendary aspects and then go from there to replace and also implement stronger uniques. So right away with Charge, I'm getting the 2-handed weapon to enable us to summon engines, which will deal 30 or 60% of the normal damage per engine. And this means I'm doing like 240% more damage as I charge, which is actually really good because this is a 2-handed weapon. Similarly over here, I'm getting additional damage with Charge by dealing damage with my core spell. And for the core spell we're going to use Whirlwind, which will deal damage rapidly. This will also enable us to debuff enemies consistently with vulnerability and also make enemies bleed to deal more damage and also reduce damage from bleeding enemies. So Whirlwind itself is very utility based, and this will also pull enemies together with the aspects of grasping Whirlwind. So periodically Whirlwind will pull enemies together. So as you pull enemies together while enjoying your 240% damage bonus, and here you're enjoying your 80% damage bonus, you'll be exploding enemies. So how the interaction works is, as Charge damage enemies, for the next 2 seconds if they're killed, they will deal damage to surrounding enemies. It's like an explosion debuff. And if you charge onto a group of enemies, which all takes damage from charge, and then they die, the explosion will be amplified multiple times. Let's say there's 10 enemies within the circle, you charge 10 enemies, all of them explode, and each of them will take the rest of the explosion damage. So this is quite interesting to go with charge, which I was quite excited to see after the buff of the charge damage and also cooldowns. Now finally, because charge is not a skill that uses resource, we can benefit with additional damage from the Edge Master because we're likely to have the maximum furies or resource gain, or resource. And this will give us additional damage. I have opted for additional damage for my amulet, which will give me 150% of the stats. So here we're looking at about 75% increase and also guaranteed overpower after swapping weapon 8 times. Now the rest of the aspects, I'm going with the Bolt Chieftain, which allows us to have lower shot cooldowns, and also I'm going for short regenerating fury. And in the future, if we do have way too much fury, we can even change this one for another utility or maybe offensive aspect. As for the gloves, I'm going with additional damage while having a barrier. This goes well with granting us a barrier while damaging elites. This is more for the early stage of the game. We can easily replace the aspects on the gloves or on the rings with one of the unique items. And finally, for the defensive capacities, I'm going with aspect of disobedience and also aspect of iron blood. I actually had a different one over here, I forgot to change it. So here we're going with additional armor and also damage reduction from bleeding enemies. So briefly going through the skill tree with you guys, both of the builds are very similar. The variety comes with dealing berserking damage or versus dealing other form of damage. We'll be using a slashing weapon, which Whirlwind will provide us with bleeding. And bleeding will reduce our damage taken and also increase damage against bleeding enemies from the Paragon board. Here we'll go with additional debuff to vulnerability against enemies with consistency with Whirlwind. Whirlwind will be pulling enemies together as well. We'll be going with triple shots. Now one of the reasons I'll be going with triple shot is I want to show you guys the martial glyph that has been updated since the latest patch, or in the future patch. So the martial glyph that used to reduce shot cooldown, but now it's reducing non-shot skill cooldown. What this does for us is, this will reduce the cooldown of charge, which enable us to charge multiple times without any cooldowns if we cast a shot correctly. This will also reduce the cooldowns of our ultimate spells. And together with the cooldown reduction of the Bolt Chieftain, the shots will be reducing cooldowns of charge and also the Iron Maelstrom. For the case if you're going with Berserk, you'll be reducing cooldown of the Wrath of the Berserker. And this can be very good in terms of utility and also offensiveness. Now as we go through the rest of the skill trees, nothing major has been changed. I'm still benefiting from healing from charge. I can swap this to damage reduction from charge. I'm still getting the normal Barbarians, and because I'll be dealing consistent bleeding damage, I'll be getting bleeding slows enemies. You don't have to go for this, and if you do benefit from slowing, this is great. If you're not, you can take away this perk as well. Most of the part, I'm going with more offensive capacities, and I do plan to use a two-handed mace as my charge weapon. Because of Belgian weapon tend to have higher base damage, and this will allow me to deal the most damage with overpower. Now the variety comes with the two builds. You might be wondering why do I have two builds. The first build will be focusing on swapping weapons, so here we'll be using Iron Maelstrom. This also reduces cooldowns as you swap weapons, and together with a key passive of Walking Arsenal, which has been buffed in the coming patch, we'll be getting additional attack speed and also additional bonus damage. So here you can see the buffs over here, 10-second duration, 15 to 20%, and also additional movement speed, additional attack speed. So this is one variety I want to provide to you guys. And here you can see the Paragon board will be adjusted with Mortal Draw, which allows us to swap weapons and deal damage because of that. Now for the case you guys want to do something more traditional, notice here the second build will be focused on damage while berserking, and because we'll be focused on becoming a berserker. And similarly, the skills will be reflecting this because we'll go with the berserking unconstrained to deal at 100% more damage while berserking. And the skill traits will be reflecting this as well. In terms of the Paragon board, we'll be going with the berserking glyph, which is this one, the Ire, which is actually a really powerful glyph to multiply lots of berserking damage. Now briefly going with the seasonal theme of the pets, I'll be going with a Flash of Adrenaline and also Slash. For my Flash of Adrenaline, I'll be getting bonus damage. I want to increase the duration of the supporter skill. I want to gain +4 to all skill rank while I'm casting my skill. Because the higher levels my charges and also my shots are, more survivability and also lower cooldowns. And I also want to have the casting of the support skill to happen more often with the tactical support. In terms of Slash, because I'm not in a big need for resource gain, my major damage is coming from charge, not from whirlwind. And this means I don't need to gain resource. I'll be breaking down enemy shields and making them vulnerable. And here we have the increase of the critical strike chance and also granting us damage reduction. So I think this is pretty well rounded in terms of the pad, and we can be adjusting this one as we go for higher tier dungeons. Now finally, for the skill rotation. I have written a bit of the theory crafting of the skill rotations, and the concept is pretty straightforward. I'll zoom in a little bit to show you guys. So the shouts will provide us -4 second cooldowns, and this is quite important to give us the ability to reduce cooldowns of the charge and also Iron Maelstrom of Berserk over here. So the idea is I'll try to activate Rally Cry if I don't have any Fury, and then I'll be pulling enemies with my Fury using Whirlwind and also debuffing them. Casting Iron Maelstrom for the first build will give us the 3 weapon swap to proc all the key aspects of the weapon swap working arsenal. And then I'll be getting additional charges and also additional procs to allow us to charge enemies with maximum fury to one-shot the entire group because of the explosion and also additional damage that is coming from all the legendary aspects. And finally, if I want more cooldowns for my charge, I can be casting my other shouts for both defensive and also offensive purposes, and this will give me lower cooldowns for charge and also lower cooldowns for my ultimate. Now for the other cases, you can cast your ultimate first, then cast your shouts, and this will give you cooldown reduction with all 3 shots. Now once the new seasons have been updated and also released, I'll be testing those 2 builds with you guys and maybe doing some tweaks and also updating the gears and also with unique items. But if you guys are interested, definitely have a look at the 2 variety of the build, which allows us to use different keystones and also different legendaries and also different ultimates, which can be very interesting. So let me know in the comments, guys, what do you think about this build and what are the changes and also recommendations you have for me for the build, and we can be looking forward to the new seasons and also testing this out for the Barbarians. Now, if you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, non-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed. So make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4.